Okay, hello and an official welcome to this Deakin University alumni virtual event presented by our Malaysia and Singapore alumni chapters. Our topic today is Adapt and Thrive, Marathon Stories of Success. Sam Johnston here from the Deakin Alumni Engagement Team. A warm welcome to everyone joining us from around the world. As we gather for this event, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognise the traditional lands on which we do our business. We acknowledge the elders, past, present, and emerging, of all the lands we work and live on, and their ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. We also acknowledge any Indigenous cultures from the places you're dialing in from today, and we pay our respects to their elders also. Today, we'll be exploring the 2020 created challenges across the globe and changed the way we interact and do business. Some people were able to find opportunities to adapt their business models to make the best of the circumstances. And today, we're going to hear from two of our wonderful alumni who fall into that category. Gloria Ng, Director of Dirigo Events, will join us from Malaysia, and Dale Cook, Managing Director of DB3 Advisory, will join us from Singapore. Before we hand over to our presenters, we'd like to get a feel for who we have in the audience. Please submit your answers to the polls that are about to pop up on the screen. And if you're joining us via Facebook Live, I'll describe them. And if you could share your answers in the comments box, that would be great. So we're going to start with the first poll now. Keen to know where you're joining us from today. So hopefully we've got alumni joining us from around the world, domestically, and it's really exciting to have the opportunity to speak with you all today and to share these stories with you. I'll just give you a little bit longer. I can see we've got some alumni, not surprisingly, tuning in from Malaysia and Singapore. That's wonderful. Some from Australia and some from mainland China. Welcome to you all. I'll give you a moment more. Please do join in with these polls. It's really useful for us to know where you're tuning in from. All right. So there we go. I have a feeling we might have a few people who are a bit shy. Please don't be shy. Please join in, and we'll get on with another poll in a moment as well. Thank you very much. So secondly, just wanting to get a feel for how you're going with the new working arrangements that might have been introduced as a result of the pandemic. There have been many changes as a result of the pandemic, including in our working life. And one of the big ones has been flexible working arrangements. What's best for you? Do you like to work from home, from the office, a balance of working from both? You don't care, you go where the work takes you. And I must admit, it's been nice to be able to do some of the work in Ugg boots, or maybe less formal clothes, but now we're back in the office. We need to spruce up a bit sometimes, don't we? All right. Thanks very much for those who have voted on that one. Can see people who like a balance and a few who like one or the other. So there we go. Thanks very much for that. And we'll keep moving on. So we want to keep that engagement going throughout today's webinar and virtual events. So please send any questions that pop into your mind during our presentations via the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can during the Q&A time at the end. Now, I'd like to hand over to another special member of our alumni community, Dr. Sadie Jane Nunes from our Singapore Alumni chapter. Sadie Jane, over to you.
Thanks very much, Sam. Greetings and salutations, everyone. That seems like a safer approach since everyone's tuning in from different places. I'm the Deakin Alumni Singapore Chapter President, and I'm so happy that so many of you have signed up for this collaboration between the Singapore and Malaysia chapters. I'm hoping that many of you are in touch with Deakin, and I highly recommend that all alumni join their various Facebook as well as LinkedIn Deakin alumni groups too. Now, I'm pleased as punch to introduce our first alumni speaker for the day, Gloria. Here's a little bit more about Gloria. With about 20 years of event management experience, Gloria has organized a wide array of events, from product launches to roadshows, conferences, fundraisers, and even to sold-out international concerts and sporting events. After graduating from Deakin University, Gloria came home and continued to make headway in the events industry in Malaysia and co-founded Dirigo Events in 2011, where she is now a director. The Standard Chartered Kale Marathon run by Dirigo Events was the proud winner of the Kuala Lumpur Mayor's Tourism Award 2014 for Best Tourism Event, Gold Award winner for Best Mass Participation Event 2017, Silver Award winner for Best Mass Participation Event 2018, and Gold Award winner for Best Sports Digital Platform 2017 and 2018, which was awarded by the Asia's Sports Industry Awards, and conference body. In 2020, Dirigo Events responded creatively to COVID-19 restrictions, turning virtual and achieving huge success. Now let's hear it from her. The floor is yours, Gloria.
Hello, thank you, Sadie, for that introduction and pretty much doing half my presentation for me. So that's great. As Sadie mentioned, I've been doing events for quite a long time, from conferences to roadshows. I actually started off doing international concerts. I had my first concert with Bon Jovi, did some Vanessa Mae concerts, Pearl Jam, Santana, and so on and so forth. And then I left and went to university. Thankfully came home with a degree, and then carried on pretty much where I left off, and right now moving on to sports events and active lifestyle type events. We specialize in mass participation sports, so marathons mostly, which has now become quite a global phenomenon, quite a great tourist attraction. All the major cities in the world are now putting on, if they not have one before, because they attract a lot of tourists. Next slide, please. Right now, we own the rights to the Kale Marathon, which is an annual event, which we took on and grew from 2009 to what it is today. We started selling out the marathon 2014 with 30,000 runners. We started with 12,500 runners, and then we went on to 15,000, 17,500, 22,000, 25,000, and then we started selling out around at 30,000, and then we increased its capacity to 35,000, and now we sell out at 40,000 runners. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, why did we get into the business? Was because well, running was really picking up. It's been around a long time, mostly in Europe and in the US, but over here it took us a little bit of time. Singapore has had it way longer than we, but we're slowly catching up, and it's become a great tool to promote active lifestyles and healthy living, as well as for brands to leverage off for their key messaging and branding and so on and so forth. And for each city and each country, like I said before, it has become quite a big tourism industry on its own. Next slide, please. The Kale Marathon, which is the only marathon in the city of Kuala Lumpur, we have a total of 40,000 runners. From an economic perspective, we bring in around 4-5 million costs. We do a lot of work for the environment with fundraising, mostly through our runners and through our charity programs. We help brands engage with the community, and of course, visibility of the brand and so on. At this point, I just want to note that at the moment, we are the largest here. Next slide, please. And in total, I think there are about 15 or 16 marathons in the country. Sadie mentioned all this, so I'm not going to get into it. But yes, we were very lucky, and we managed to win a couple of awards, which was nice. Next slide. And then one day we woke up, and then we were told that we couldn't do what we were doing anymore. The pandemic came, everybody was I suppose, dumbfounded. Bosses, we all got together, investors, we all got together, and we all started to talk to our sponsors. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with our sponsors? How are we going to keep the industry, the business alive? How do we bring mass participation races back when there is no, back then, there is no end in sight? And I got to tell you, it's a bit surreal when you have to click that button and you literally see millions of ringgit disappearing from your account because you got to give back all the sponsorship dollars and everything else. So it took us a while to strategize, and we intentionally sat still for a little while, simply because everything was so new. There was no precedents for us to follow. There was no case studies for us to refer to. So lots and lots and lots of discussions. Next slide, please. What happened was then, in Malaysia at least, virtual marathons started to appear more and more, fairly similar formats, where you could sign up remotely, you pay a certain fee, and then you run wherever you are, and then you submit your results to the organizers. We did not roll out when everybody else was rolling out. We decided to take a step back. We decided to just have a think and have a study a little bit. We did a lot of research, spoke to a lot of people, started to form collaborations and partnerships, and a lot of brainstorming. And then we launched, finally, I think we were the last to launch in Malaysia. We launched ours, had our virtual run in December of 2020. I think a lot of times during this time, you would hear the word innovate and innovation and creation, simply because everything has to be new. It's almost like a reset button. It's almost like having to create a sub-industry within your industry. And so we followed suit after having many discussions with different partners, or at that time would have been partners. And this is what we came up with of why we think that our race would be successful. We, of course, through innovation and a partnership with a company called District, we had a smartphone app with a GPS-based activity tracker, leaderboard, rankings, AR face filters, event feed sharing options, and so on. We decided to make our race free of charge. So we were not, anybody could sign up. We were not charging anything, but we were offering merchandise. And if you wanted to have a medal and your t-shirt, you would have to buy it. The medals were personalized, which was, again, something that I think the runners really appreciated. And of course, we leveraged on the popularity of an already existing brand, which was already very recognized and very popular with the running community. But again, here, I just wanted to say that we didn't scramble, we didn't rush, even though our hearts were racing and we were really worried and we were really unsure of what the future was going to be like for us as a company, for us as an industry. We just sort of took a breath and just studied for months before we decided to roll out what we rolled out. Next slide, please. And this is the outcome. So ultimately, we managed to attract 52,363 runners from all over the world. We connected with our top runners in Malaysia. We connected with our international open category winners. So our Kenyan runners, a lot of them signed up from Kenya, and they were racing at that time with us as well. So in total, internationally, we had about 3,000 nationalities from 89 different countries who signed up to run our virtual race, well, technically for the first time. Out of 52,000, we had 32,000 and 23 finishers, because ours at that moment was the only race that you had to actually compete in. There was no race mileage accumulation option. Once you started your race, you had to finish your distance. If you signed up for the 42, you would have had to finish the 42 in one go. If you pause the app, it stops. There's no pause option. If you stop for a drink, or you need to go to the toilet, or whatever it is, the time continues and adds on to your finishing time. The reason we did that was because we wanted to create as much of the same elements that we could of the physical race, which everybody loved so much. And we wanted to challenge the people, because race accumulation, while it's fantastic and it's great for leagues and things, it doesn't give you the real feeling of running in an actual race. You can't, stop your time when you're actually competing in an actual race. And that's what we wanted to bring to the virtual run. Even though we couldn't have the masses gathered, we couldn't have the same atmosphere, we tried to recreate that on screen. Next slide. Total PR value was really good as well, because it was new, because everybody was already by that time asking what's going to happen with the Kale Marathon, what's going to happen with the Kale Marathon. So in total, we had about over 1 million PR value. Our Facebook reach was quite good, with over 1 billion as well. 13% engaging, and it was pretty good for the Instagram and Twitter assets as well. So our sponsors, or our sponsor, which was again Standard Chartered Bank, pretty happy with the results. Pretty happy with the product that we created, that initially served as a placeholder for the actual race, for when the race can come back. And we are looking at maybe doing it better again this year, assuming the race doesn't come back this year. Next slide, please. And so with that, the things that I wanted to say was that I think just take a bit of time and just to research with people. The key thing is, of course, to innovate and to come up with new things and a new way to sell to people, new ideas, new ways, new avenues. Do your research. Collaboration, I think, in times like this is extremely key. Don't be afraid to consult with people. Don't be afraid to brainstorm with other people. It doesn't matter if they were once your competitors or your vendors or your sponsors or somebody completely out of your field of work before the pandemic. While it is all very scary time for everybody, I think a little bit of patience, and if you have developed a good idea, and if you have developed a great new network of collaborators and partnerships and consultants, then you need to have the courage to try it, because hey, at this point nobody has anything to lose, really. So for us, being in the virtual world right now, and being able to stay on top of it, and doing that for one more year, because we feel that we need to do this for one more year before the world comes back again. We're very grateful that it actually worked, and we did get the largest number of runners in the country, and we are hoping to recreate that one more time. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Gloria. Thank you so much. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Dale. Now, a bit about Dale. Dale started work life as a lawyer. later moving into accounting and finance with multinational mining and resource firms in Australia and overseas too. He has developed extensive experience in executive leadership and board governance in multinational resource and commodity firms, applying expertise in finance, sales and marketing, operations and innovation to drive transformation, operational effectiveness, and commercial success. He has managed finance and commercial teams in Australia, Singapore, China, Europe, London, South America, and Africa as well. He is a graduate of AICD, a qualified listed entity director with the SID, and a certified chair and Singapore Community Chair with the Advisory Board Centre. He recently co-founded the SME and Startup Group within AusCham Singapore and is a special advisor to the Singapore Mining Club. His time with BCG Digital Ventures in Berlin to find the next disruptor for commodity, marketing, and logistics stimulated his passion for creativity and innovation. Currently based in Singapore, he founded DB3 Advisory, providing expert advice to boards and executives across Asia on governance, risk, innovation, and operational improvement. Dale completed his MBA, double major strategy and planning, leadership and communication at Deakin, having already attained a Bachelor of Laws, Bachelor of Commerce. He has also attained a postgraduate certificate in science, wine science, and is currently completing a Doctor of Business Administration in Innovation. Dale, the floor is yours.
So Jane, thank you very much for that, well, I suppose, long introduction. But yeah, I suppose in short, I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to lots and to many. And that's what I'm hoping to share with you all today. So COVID-19, it forced changes on all of us. And as this quote from Confucius says, it's about those who embrace the change, like water, gave themselves the best opportunity, not only just to survive, but also to thrive. So my personal experience in Singapore and Australia and across Asia, I found that examples where people have the right mindset, where they looked at things differently, where they looked at how it impacted them, was great, but it's about how they embraced it. So as I said, the mindset of accepting the change gave them that opportunity. It also, having access to a community and a network, gave them access to ideas. And diversity in thinking. For me, I hear about diversity, but I think people miss the point. It's about actually having that great exposure to different ideas, different views, different walks of life. It helps you actually then understand problems better and identify opportunities for solving them. So creating an environment for this. So what I wanted to do today was share some examples of what I personally had seen here in Singapore and abroad. I talk about the town. I want to talk about the smaller end of town. Some people where, well, ideas start with people. It doesn't start with a business. It's the people within the business come up with the ideas. And really what it came down to was 4 areas. It was around where they reinvent, relearn, rethink, and re-engage. So the first one that I want to share with you is Prisma. Prisma is a not-for-profit Malay dance company here in Singapore. And as you would expect, it's about a little bit like what Gloria talked about, with a marathon event. It's about being face-to-face. They made a brave decision in 2019 to move to a self-funded model. So cut themselves off from government funding, which was going to end in April 2020. COVID comes along in early 2020 and they lose access to all their face-to-face events, which was their whole plan. So what was their challenge? Where's their revenue going to come from without the ability to conduct live performances? But what was their opportunity? Their opportunity was to reinvent themselves, their products and their markets. So they had to think about, well, what is it that we actually do? And how can we actually approach this and find a new way to basically sell a product? And what they came up with was their 3 strategic mission, or tri-strategic mission. They looked at training. So it was around, elderly people, training them, local schools, dance for health, students, etc. It was about connecting, revealing and showing what Malay dance culture was really about, because they wanted to cross the bridge between traditional and contemporary dance. And then when it came down to innovate, they had to think of new ideas and new ways to conduct performances. And the one on the right-hand side, and our Malaysian friends and those who speak Malay will be able to understand, or Bahasa, sorry, be able to understand that Jiwang is actually about. But for me, I'll explain it as it was like a pick a path book. So as you watched the digital event, it wasn't live, it was recorded. It would get to certain points and you'd pick whether you wanted to go left or right or up or down, or depending on the question, what you wanted to do. And so you created your own event. And it was actually not so much an Australian thing, but very much an Asian thing. It was also participating in karaoke. So you could sing along with the events. This was one of their many new products that they came up with. So this gave them then opportunity for new income streams. It's given them new exposure, and the government's actually approached them now and say, well, rather than being funded as a charity, we want to fund you as a client. So they've been able to pick up different work. So they reinvented themselves. The next one is one that I suppose I heavily embraced myself, was around relearning. And it's quite apt that we're here with Deakin today, and the opportunity to relearn. One of the associations that I'm a part of is the Advisory Board Centre. Professional body for advisory boards. They had their program that was all delivered face-to-face. Again, COVID comes and they no longer can do it. So how are they going to actually deliver training and courses and develop new members during COVID? And basically, they decided, let's rapidly move to going digital. As a result of this, the certified chair program, as you see some of the participants there, a familiar face of Zoom, it actually changed to where it was 2 days full-time face-to-face to a 4-day part-time online program. It enabled participants to follow up with later support and coaching and guidance as they take on advisory boards. And it also meant that they could go global. So as a result of that, they've been able to expand across into many countries. They're on every continent, but I'm not sure how many countries there are, but they've actually been able to grow much faster than they otherwise expected through leveraging this relearning opportunity. They've even developed new concepts around having in-house advisory boards. The other one that I thought was very important here about relearning, Singapore jumped straight onto this with their Skills Future program. It was happening even before COVID, but they really pushed it. And so being proactive again, they identified this need for education, whether it be mid-career, late career, early career, and people were given credits to be able to jump in and do online programs. I think it was very successful. I spoke to a lot of my friends here in Singapore who took advantage of it and got them thinking differently about what they could do. Even personally, I suppose for me, I made the brave decision of taking on not only graduate work with company directors in Singapore and Australia, but also started my doctorate in innovation. And COVID was a perfect opportunity to go back and think about problems differently and relearn. So another one I can encourage you to do. The next one was rethinking. So Argo Natural Resources is someone I've been working with. They've got a revolutionary recovery of metals, non-toxic solution. And they had struggled, if I put it nicely, I suppose, they had struggled to understand what really is their business. They came from mining. Where do they go with this? It's a way of processing. The intention was to process metals out of ores. But they hadn't really thought about, well, what's their business purpose and where and how could their technology be deployed. So they went back and used COVID to rethink. They then discovered that, through some support from myself, that they should be more ESG focused. So environment, sustainability, governance. And so they looked at it and said, well, how can we support communities? How can we be in many regions, many markets? And so they've split it out now and they have this mining and e-waste businesses. And they're currently looking at how they can develop the circular economy, ESG focused part here in Singapore. And with that, they've also been able to expand their offering from where they were just looking at metals that are in phones. It started off with gold, for instance. And as you can see at the periodic table on the right, on the top there, it was mainly in the center part of the periodic table. They thought about it and went, hang on, batteries are critical to where things are going to go in the future. And so they've expanded the research and now broadened it out where they're covering a lot of other metals, mainly around batteries. So they rethought their business model, rethought where their product could be used and how it could be applied. COVID facilitated this. The next one was about re-engaging, and this is quite apt given the situation we're in right now with this presentation. So another client worked with Smart Grid Solutions. They've got some innovative and smart technology for electricity networks. Startup business just before COVID hit, based in Australia, and then go into lockdowns. And like any startup, it has enough challenges as it is, let alone having the impact of not being able to reach out and engage with customers and understand what their needs are. So the founder was quite clever in this. Speaking with him, there was, as I said, the challenge was around how did you develop the business and understand what their needs are. So he used actually things like events like this. He would sit here, see who's online at conferences and other events. He would then reach out to these people individually because they were global. They were happy to take calls from somewhere else, whereas before COVID, they wouldn't have been as willing. They were also stuck at home as well, so they had nowhere else to go. So they're happy to engage with someone from afar. And he used this to identify new opportunities and develop some new thinking and getting that diversity of thinking, as I talked about. And so he then came up and he noticed that people wanted sustainable energy use solutions. And he could see that people in Australia is a good example where they use solar panels on their house, and there's a whole controversy about going back into the network and what they get paid for it. These people, if they've bought solar panels, they've bought an electric vehicle, how do I put the two things together? And there hasn't been any systems around managing that were well integrated. There's systems out there, but they operate in isolation. So through that, he developed EV Hub and Smart Charge. EV Hub's a hardware that is capable of handling this change and implementing the integrated solution, and Smart Charge is the software. He's also discovered that there's a gap in the market around EV charger density. And so a fast charge DC is about $100,000, and you get per charge about $1 in revenue, profit out of that. So you need 100,000 chargers and before you actually make your money back. So commercially, that's not viable. But he's discovered there's this commercial AC product that's about $7,000 to put in. Whilst it doesn't charge within 30 minutes, it charges within 1 to 4 hours. And so most people, if they're going shopping or to the movies or to a restaurant, have 1 to 4 hours. They don't need to charge so fast in such a period of time. Also, if there's more of them, you don't need to charge to full because you know there's another one around the corner. So that re-engagement with his customers and potential customers and getting that diversity of thinking again enabled him to rethink his business and his business model and where he was going to take it. And it's really starting to take off. So as I said, it's really around how they reinvent, relearn, rethink, and re-engage. And each of those will lead to different business models as each of these businesses have. I can see lots of evolutions coming from this, and it's actually really interesting because it's part of the area of research that I'm looking at is around transformational sustainability. So how do people change to be more sustainable businesses? What is it they have to do from a structure, financing, organization point of view, and what's their business model? So taking a hold of these challenges and opportunities, leading to being able to survive, and not only that, thrive. There's some great stories out there, so I encourage you to go and speak to those. And look up these businesses. They're quite impressive. Thank you, Sadie Joan.
Thanks, Dale. Hi, everybody. Thanks for remaining with us. Can I just remind you all to put any questions into the Q&A if you've got any questions for Dale or for Gloria. And I'm going to throw a couple in right now. We have one question for you, Gloria, which is, how did you cope with the uncertainties of government-imposed stay-home restriction, the MCO?
So not very well, truthfully. No, it was a little bit of on a personal level. It was extremely difficult because then we have kids and we have to manage the kids and we've got to work around that, and online school was difficult, and because of all that, all our people working from home wasn't the most ideal way of being able to get together and brainstorming and trying to, as Dale said several times, reinvent things. Wasn't very conducive. So what we did was we had to plan a lot of very scheduled regular discussions, small breakout group discussions, and then just lots of emails and lots of less emails, a lot of WhatsApp messages and video calls through WhatsApp. I think just trying to stay in touch with everybody and trying to keep everybody motivated and to just sort of not to fight against kind of just being hidden away from the world so much. So I think we did okay with keeping in touch with people. I think we did okay keeping our sanities alive, correct, and kept on heading in the right direction. But it certainly wasn't easy at all.
I think Brian might have been more referring to what happens if people weren't allowed to go out and run around their neighbourhood to do the race. What would you have done then?
Oh, we would have just sat and waited. You wouldn't have been able to do anything in our industry. We would just have to have relied on completely diversifying the business completely. It was like that way for a long time. I think it was maybe about 3 or 4 months before they started relaxing the rules. And it was also about when they did start relaxing the rules, it was always about running, getting out there, but got to do it on your own, or you got to do it just as a pair. You couldn't get too close to the other person, and so on and so forth. And our industry is all about doing the exact opposite, getting out there and coming as a group and training together and having our races that way. So if it wasn't relaxed to the point where outdoor running was allowed, we would have gone into a completely different business, completely, and just waited out.
Yeah, that would have been very, very tricky if all of a sudden they'd put a limit on us, especially when we had the 5K limit. You know, that's a lot of laps to do a marathon.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a question here for Dale. Dale, Gloria mentioned that it's important not to be first, but to be the best. So i.e. we're hanging back and waiting to see what everybody else is doing. What has been your experience in innovating to resist the urge to be the first to do something, rather than to learn from what others do and how you can do it better?
Well, I suppose there's two ways you can take this. You can take it as Gloria said, where you wait and learn from others, and the product you take to market is more likely to be the successful one. But there's also the other way of basically trying and seeing how it works. And it doesn't necessarily have to be fully to market. I've seen some, the Smart Grid is a very good example of where they took little parts of their product to different parts of the market to see what they'd say. So took it to individuals. So a good one is around the EV charging. They went to an EV charging group, enthusiast group. And so went to that group and said, right, this is what we've got. How do you think this would go? What's your views and what's your opinion? And there was some really good feedback. So yes, if they had to put that into the market and jumped in first, it could have been a failure. But by doing it in a controlled and structured way, it enabled them to get the feedback from potential customers and adapt and evolve the product. So I think you can actually use both models, but you just got to be mindful that each has opportunities and each has limitations. And as long as you're the sort of person that's okay with making mistakes and failing and and getting up and having another go, along the lines of, it's not how often a boxer gets knocked down, it's about how many times he gets up. And as long as it's one more than the knockdowns, then they've got a good chance of winning. It's the same in this. As long as you're the sort of person that can handle that and keep going at it, you'll be successful.
Thanks, Dale. Another question for you, Gloria. Did you, your company, offer any training advice in the lead up to the event as part of the product, or was it focused primarily on the marathon itself?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did you offer any training advice in the lead up to the event as part of the product, or was it were you focused primarily on the marathon itself?
For 2020, it was pretty much focused on the marathon and the run itself. We had in the app some training time where you could use the app and log your training, but no training programs as such, not last year, no. But that is something that we will add on for this year, assuming that if we do it again the same way, then we will have that as well, yes.
And another one for you, Gloria, is, so what's next for the marathon? Can we expect it to be online again this year? Or, excuse me, or will it be a hybrid event?
At the moment, we do not know, and that's the absolute truth. I mean, we are very, we've got our ears to the ground a lot, very closely, just to see what's going on. And we are hopeful with the vaccination programs being rolled out that our industry will start again soon. But we are also anticipating that when it does start, there will be a lot of restrictions and there will be a lot of procedures to follow. And for us, with 40,000 runners and over 4,000 people employed on race weekend, it might prove to be quite a challenge to. So say, for example, if we had to flag them off in groups of 100 or 10 or 200, 40,000 is a lot of runners to flag off.
Yeah.
If we had to take the temperatures of everyone working and having to check in where they are all the time, it's doable, but it's going to be quite a challenge. So right now we are in discussions with our sponsors and our partners as to which way we want to take it. But at the moment, there is no fixed decision yet, because with the authorities that we have to work with as well, they are also telling us to wait and see.
I guess that's the key thing. It's that the physicality, I guess.
Yeah.
There's just no easy way for this. Dale, will you've given some examples of companies that I think you work with, you work and advise with. How was your own company affected, and how did you respond to the downturn? Is working with these companies the effect of that?
It is. So I'm fortunate that the way I structured DB3 Advisory is that rather than going out and being a traditional consultant where we try to employ a lot of people and then we just focus on the work, I see there's a new business model opportunity out there. As I started engaging with people when I first before I started the business, actually, it was in the early days, I found that there's a lot of people out there who are one-person bands. So they've got themselves and they try to do a bit of everything. And one of the hard things for them is they will take on work that isn't exactly in their area of expertise. So the way I structured the business in the end was through a network. So for DB3 Advisory, we're connected with probably about 20 other businesses that are similar to us, but they're in different areas of expertise. There might be someone who's very risk focused, someone else who's a commodity trader, for instance, someone who's strong in finance, another one who's strong in energy utilities. And so the business model that I have for DB3 was fortunate, actually, because we already operated remotely, because I've got these connections in the UK, Australia, Singapore, China, one in the US. So it actually supported what I was actually trying to develop. So it was opportune in a way, but still a challenge like anyone else when you're trying to engage with customers and introduce them to a new way of working. It did make it a bit harder, but again, we all got a little bit more comfortable with using the screen in front of us as a bit of a safety net to be able to reach out to people and have a conversation, which face-to-face is sometimes a bit harder, and it's a bit easier to sell yourself that way too when you've got a bit of a safety net. So it actually was a positive thing for the business, probably slowed the takeoff of it, but it's actually really coming along now. It's great.
This next question from Brian sort of ties into that a little bit. Most companies' top management tend to be resistant to change and prefer to keep doing what had worked in the past. How would you convince executives to implement changes necessary in order to adapt to a changing environment?
This is actually part of the reason why I was happy to step out, because the classic question I'd ask people when I was doing business improvement projects was, so why do you do it that way? And the answer being, but that's the way we've always done it. Mm. And that tells me immediately that no one's looked at any other way, any other solution. Now, it's not saying that there is no other way to do it. And it's not saying that it's not the right way either, but it's just they haven't looked at it. So usually the way I approach it when I talk with the execs about trying to basically pitch for a change, it's more around the lost value that they're missing out on. Because you think any change is around value creation and then the value capture. And so when you first actually have a change, there's always that dip, you drop down, you put in the effort, the people are unsure, you're not as productive, it's costing you money for the change. And unfortunately, a lot of people will get to the bottom and go, this is all too hard, they stop, let's change again. And then they go down and down and down. They need to get past the curve and get back up to get a return on their investment. And so it's about talking to them around missing the opportunity to capture value. And if they see that there's value there and they're missing an opportunity to capture it, they're more likely to listen. They're still just as scared as anybody else. They're still worried about a change. They're still worried about the impact it'll have on them. I mean, I've had CFOs of large organizations saying to me, oh, but I think I'll pay 10 times the price of what you're charging to go with a BCG or McKinsey because they've got that badge. And if it goes bad, it's their fault, not mine. But the ones who have been brave enough to take it on board have, my fee compared to what their fee is far, far less. It probably is around a 10-to-1 ratio. And they can see then that it's easier for them to capture that value. It's not easy, it's hard, but that's the target I try to give. It's around the missed opportunity. It's almost using a little bit of FOMO or fear of missing out or a bit of envy that if they don't do it, their competitor will. So why not give it a try? But each one's different, and you think you nail it, and then you never hear from them again. Then the next one you go in, they throw more work at you than you wanted. So, and like some of the examples I used, the idea around, say, Argo, for instance, was to come to Singapore. That was really scary for these guys. They're mining guys in the UK. They don't work anywhere else. And the idea of moving to Singapore has taken a bit of work, but now they're a bit excited about the prospect. So it can happen.
Cool, thank you. Gloria, are you thinking about branching out into other virtual events? And what are some of the best ways you've seen people engaging with audiences virtually?
At the moment, no, we are going to stick to virtual running, at least for now, at least for this year. Again, that's because it's something that we know, right? It is an audience that we feel very close to and that we are connected with, and that we think that we can best serve. And maybe we would roll out different formats, different challenges, but for now it would be mostly centered around distance running.
I have one question for both of you, but I'll ask Gloria first while she's still here. What new software skills or applications or technology did you have to learn and use in the last 12 months?
Zoom, for one. Yes, that was something that we also stressed on our team and my colleagues, and this goes back to keeping them motivated mostly. So for me personally, it was a lot of brushing up on skills that I already had, but making it better. So it would be the standard presentation and Excel and all those things, but that's me. My team, of course, now they're more savvy with app development, and the idea is we can't develop our own apps, but at least we know what we're talking about, and we know how the whole process works and what can be done, what can't be done. Our design team is of course getting much better with film editing and the production side of our work. So how do I put this? It is then of course it's about how we communicate with people. We're learning a lot on how to communicate with our audiences and our friends in the industry very, very differently. I think we find that we have to sort of change the way we speak almost because it's all online and there's no more human, almost no more human touch to it. But yeah, so a lot of the innovations and the new things, and we're now researching a lot as well on what are the tools that are coming out to help us with our virtual runs. How do we make it better? How do you make it more stable? How do you have better tracking capabilities like that?
It's been a pretty steep learning curve for a lot of us. Dale, what about you and your clients?
Besides learning a lot around deep eutectic solvents, which makes me sound really intelligent when I say it, the DES, which is simply just urea and salt solutions, also around electric vehicles and around smart grids. The one thing that I really set out to learn, and I am quite proud of the fact that I have been able to achieve this, I've still got a long way to go, but I started my doctorate because I wanted to look at problems differently for clients. So I've had many years as a manager where the fire burns, and as a manager, you go and put out the fire, and then the next one burns and you put out that fire. But never do you have a chance to stand back and go, well, is that the right solution to put out that fire? Why did that fire burn green and not blue? And how did it start? And how come it only flared up now? And how can we use that fire for good and not evil? And all this. And this is why I thought I'd take on my doctorate and learn how to be a researcher, because I feel as though developing those skills will help me give better solutions and better answers to clients. It's been fantastic. The thing that I've learned and discovered is Google Scholar, and little problems like the other day I was dealing with the value of trying to understand when I was talking to investors in Argo, we're talking about ESG, and they're saying, this is really sexy right now. There's lots of money in this. You know, we're happy to throw money at it because it's going to give a good return. And so normally I would have just gone and thought, okay, I'll take that on face value. But as a researcher now, I jumped in and read some articles around valuations of ESG. And I looked at that differently and went, actually, it's not exactly as you think. There's a correlation with the business case, but you know, there's some certain levers that have to come into play. And one of them in particular is full implementation of ESG, not just developing a policy. So it's taught me to understand problems better and come up with better solutions as a result. I mean, it's also being able to do other things like conduct design thinking sessions remotely. You know, normally it's engagement in a room, or sprints, been involved in some agile sprints remotely. So there's been some old skills in a different way and done digitally, but the one around understanding problems and identifying solution for them, that's something that's really going to help me later on and help clients later on.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? We had a similar thing because we do internships, but we had to put them into, in fact, to make them remote in the last 12 months. But out of that, we've realized that there's actually a whole market for remote internships for students that wouldn't normally travel anyway, you know, people with disabilities or people that are caregivers and things like that. So, you know, a new product has been invented that has a whole new market that, you know, nobody was even thinking about 12 months ago. So it's sort of, you know, really interesting.
Whole new business models. It's like what Gloria
talked exactly
about, new business model, and the number of business models. You know, years ago, someone tried to say this is how many there are. They're endless. You can have so many different permutations. So
that's the exciting thing. Yeah, I find it really exciting. I think we've got time for one last question, and that's for you, Dale. Azri is asking, is it a one size fits all for all industries that had to migrate from something physical to digital?
Yes and no. I'll give the consultant answer. It depends. The yes and no. So if I use the example of Prisma, for example, really it came back to the basics. What's our market? What are people willing to pay for it? Who do we target it? What products will they pay for and not pay for? So some of those real basics that you apply in any business. So you could flip that over into the smart grid one I talked about. Well, who's going to buy electric vehicle charger? What do they want? How much are they going to pay? So some of it is similar to go from a physical engagement to a digital. But when you go through that process of discovery, you see that they actually think about new opportunities with it. They look at it differently. And this is why it was good. One of the sessions I had with Prisma was, what is your market and what is your product? Let's see where they link up. They come up with some fantastic ideas. I mean, this is one of the online digital design thinking sessions I did, and then I got to do one face-to-face. But they come up with some very different ideas because you throw digital into it. So when you have a physical like dance, and then you go, what can we do digitally? This is where they came up with this pick a path type idea and an interactive engagement with dance done online. So it's yes and no. It's a similar path. You only need to understand your product, your business, your market, your business model, your opportunities. But then you throw digital into it and you start thinking differently about it. So that's the bit that's different. It can go many different ways. Sorry, Jan, you're...
Thanks, Dale. Okay, so I think that's all we have time for in terms of questions. So I'm going to pass back to Sam, who will wrap up.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jan. And thanks to you and Sadie Jane for facilitating today, and to our alumni presenters, Gloria and Dale. What a wonderful discussion. Thanks as well to our other alumni volunteers who've been involved in organising for today. We're nearly at the end of our event, but I have some important messages from our alumni team that I'd like to share with you. Firstly, we'd love to stay in touch with you. So please make sure you have your current contact information up to date with us, the alumni engagement team, so we can invite you to relevant events and more. You can also follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn if you aren't already. And please check out our YouTube channel for webinar recordings and other great content. Our Student Emergency Assistance Fund is dedicated to supporting Deakin students who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. If you're in position to do so, please consider donating to support this important cause via Deakin's giving website, which is up on the screen now. To watch past webinar and seminar recordings, you can visit our website, the webinar and resources page, and you can also visit our YouTube page. Just search for Deakin Alumni. This event is being recorded and will be posted online, and you'll receive an email with a recording link as well in the coming days. Lastly, you can submit any feedback about this event to deakinalumni@deakin.edu.au. We'd love to hear from you, and we hope you've enjoyed yourself today. Thanks once again to our presenters, and thanks to you for joining us. This has been a great collaboration between the Malaysia and Singapore alumni chapters, and we really appreciate their work on this. Please stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to staying in touch with you. Thanks.